My child, listen to me before your fear tries to name this season for you. Listen to me before the noise around you convinces you that what is shifting is falling apart. The final step has begun, and you do not yet understand what is coming next. That is why I called you here at this exact moment, because if I did not steady your heart now, you would misread the movement, and if you misread the movement, you would mishandle what I am doing. There is a reason the pressure changed. There is a reason certain voices went silent. There is a reason you have felt both a strange grief and a strange pull at the same time. Before this word is over, you will understand why the thing that felt like an ending was actually the edge of release, and you will also understand why I did not let you force the door that seemed so close. Those two mysteries are tied together, and the enemy hoped you would grow tired before I named them. I am speaking to the part of you that has been trying to stay composed, while everything inside you has been asking, why now? Why is the battle sharper when I was finally starting to breathe again? Why did the loneliness deepen right when I thought I had learned how to stand? Why did the confusion show up right when I asked for clarity? Hear me carefully. What you thought was random pressure was actually spiritual reaction. What you thought was delay was also concealment. What you thought was an unanswered cry was, in more ways than you know, me keeping the final step hidden until the ground beneath it was ready to carry your weight. I have not brought you this far to abandon you in a hallway between promise and fulfillment. I have been watching every inward tremble. I have seen the private restraint nobody applauded. I have heard the prayers you did not even finish because your heart was too tired to shape them into sentences. And let me say this plainly, because you are not listening to a general word. This is not casual encouragement thrown over a crowd. This is a direct interruption. This is me putting my hand on your thoughts before they run ahead of your faith. You have been tempted to interpret this season through loss alone, but loss is not the deepest truth here. Formation is, separation is, positioning is. Joseph knew what it was to carry a word from heaven and then be thrown into places that looked nothing like the dream. Yet even the pit, the prison, the false accusations, and the waiting were not proof that I had changed my mind. They were proof that I knew where to hide him until the hour of unveiling could no longer be delayed. That pattern matters for you more than you realize. If this message has already touched the exact place you have kept hidden, subscribe and stay connected, because I am not speaking to you once and walking away. There is ongoing confirmation for this season, and you cannot afford to ignore the ways I keep reaching for you. Now hear the first thing many people miss when the final step begins. The atmosphere shifts before the circumstances do. That is why you have felt a disturbance you could not explain. That is why certain relationships started to feel heavier without a visible reason. That is why old temptations suddenly knocked again, not because you were moving backward, but because what once had access to you could sense that its time was ending. The final step does not begin with applause. It often begins with compression. It begins with a tightening, a stripping, a clarifying. It begins when what cannot go with you starts becoming uncomfortable around you. You were asking me for a sign, and one sign was already there. What used to entertain you no longer fits in your spirit the same way. What used to distract you started tasting empty. What used to keep you numb started making you restless. That is not punishment. That is transition. There is something else I have not said yet, and it is part of why this hour feels so strange to you. The final step began the moment I stopped allowing your old ways of surviving to keep working. That shook you. It was not because I was being cruel. It was because if the old coping mechanisms kept functioning, you would remain emotionally attached to a version of yourself that cannot survive where I am taking you. You called it exhaustion. In part, it was exposure. You called it spiritual heaviness. In part, it was the collapse of false support systems. You called it being misunderstood. In part, it was me teaching you not to build your identity out of who recognizes you. I was not merely removing comfort. I was closing exits. Some of you have been asking why I did not let certain people stay. Let me answer without softening it. Because they knew the old version of you too well, and some of them were only loyal to the version they could control. They were comfortable when you doubted yourself. They were present when your discernment was asleep. They liked you uncertain, over-explaining, available on demand, apologizing for your depth, apologizing for your boundaries, apologizing for the fire in your spirit. But when I began to wake you up, they felt the change before you had language for it. So the tension grew, the distance grew, the odd reactions grew. What you thought was your failure to maintain peace was often a reaction to the authority forming in silence inside you. And this is where many chosen ones become vulnerable. When the final step begins, the urge to chase clarity from people becomes intense. You want closure, you want explanations, you want one clean conversation that makes the emotional math make sense. Do not run after that, because the moment you try to drag hidden things into human order before their time, you risk tying your peace to a response I never assigned power to give. There is a layer beneath this that you have not fully seen yet. Some doors stayed unanswered because silence was exposing who only loved access, not covenant, who loved your availability, not your becoming, who loved your usefulness, not your soul. I am not telling you not to chase simply so you can sit in pain. I am telling you not to chase because revelation is already working where conversation would only create smoke. If your spirit is witnessing to that, like this video, as your quiet act of agreement, sometimes a simple yes matters because it marks the moment you stop arguing with what heaven has already been showing you. You have called this season confusing, but let me rename part of it. It has been a season of spiritual untangling. I have been separating grief from guilt. I have been separating compassion from bondage. I have been separating patience from passivity. I have been separating humility from self-erasure. You learned to carry things I never asked you to carry, because somewhere in your story, love became entangled with over-responsibility. So you kept showing up, kept absorbing, kept explaining, kept helping, kept bending, and then wondered why your soul felt crowded. Beloved, the final step cannot be walked by a soul still negotiating with every weight it should have released 3 seasons ago. So I began to untangle you. That untangling did not feel holy at first. It felt messy. It felt like tears at odd hours. It felt like memories resurfacing. It felt like the return of questions you thought were already buried. It felt like mourning people who are still alive, but no longer safe for your destiny. It felt like me touching the exact places where you learned to survive by shrinking. And when I touched those places, your first instinct was to hide them from me, as if I had not already seen every fracture. But I was not exposing you to shame you. I was exposing you to heal you at the root. Surface healing could not carry the final step. There is a reason I let you feel what others told you to bypass. Because whatever is not faced with me will be dragged, unhealed, into the future and speak from the shadows when pressure rises. I loved you too much to let that happen. So yes, some nights were longer than you expected. Yes, some prayers felt like you were standing in the dark, saying, "Lord, I know you are near, but I do not know what you are doing." Yes, there were moments when you felt both hope and fatigue in the same breath. But hear this. Fatigue is not always a sign that you are failing. Sometimes it is the sensation of old internal structures collapsing while new strength is still forming. What comes next is the part many overlook. The final step is not merely about arrival, it is about alignment. Many have wanted the visible blessing without the invisible rearrangement. Many have wanted the open door without the inward government to remain whole after walking through it. Many have asked for increase while still thinking from the wound, reacting from the wound, choosing from the wound. But the final step demands internal agreement with what I have spoken over you. That is why I have been confronting not only your enemies, but also your internal contradictions. You cannot step into a new assignment while secretly believing you must still earn what I called you to receive. Let me press this deeper. Some of your warfare has not been about whether the promise exists. It has been about whether you will stand like someone who truly believes you belong in what I have prepared. The enemy studies hesitation. He studies the places where shame still whispers. He studies the moments when a chosen one begins to apologize for the weight of the oil on their life. He cannot cancel my word, but he will try to wear down your agreement with it. That is why one of the fiercest battles in this hour has been over your perception of yourself. You thought the attack was about your mood. It was about your posture. You thought it was about making you sad. It was about making you small. Comment, I will not become small, if this word is meeting you right where the pressure has been pressing. Let your words rise in agreement, because sometimes the mouth must reinforce what the spirit already knows. Listen closely now, because here is another revelation. The final step often begins with a holy narrowing. Not everything expands at once. Sometimes I narrow your circle, narrow your options, narrow your appetite for noise, narrow the range of voices you can tolerate, narrow your tolerance for false urgency. This narrowing is mercy. It protects focus. It protects clarity. It protects seed. A river has force because its movement is channeled. If it spills everywhere, it becomes weaker. Some of you have mistaken narrowing for restriction, when in truth it has been concentration. I have been teaching your life to flow with force. And because I am speaking directly, I will also address the part you have been embarrassed to admit. There were moments you wondered if you had missed me. There were moments you looked at the length of the process and quietly feared that maybe you misheard me in the beginning. There were moments you compared your hidden season to someone else's visible movement and felt that ache of being left behind. But comparison is a dishonest narrator. It never tells you the cost of what it is showing you. It never tells you which doors were forced, which smiles are strained, which victories are premature, which partnerships are already cracking under the weight of compromise. I do not measure your life against the appearance of another person's timing. I measure it against my faithfulness and my design. That is why what felt late was often protection from premature visibility. David was anointed long before he sat on the throne. Between the oil and the throne there were caves, betrayal, restraint, and the painful discipline of not taking by force what heaven had already promised. That pattern is living inside your season too. You wanted me to hurry the crown, but I was teaching your hands not to reach like Saul. I was teaching your heart how to carry power without becoming corrupted by the need to prove yourself. And that is not a small lesson. That is the difference between receiving a door and sustaining a calling. If this channel has become a place where these words keep finding you at the right moment, subscribe and turn on the bell. This is a season of direct instruction, and staying connected matters when heaven is speaking in continuity. Now let me return to one of the mysteries I opened at the beginning. You asked why I would not let you force the door that seemed so close. Here is part of the answer. Because the door itself was not the greatest promise. The version of you who emerges while waiting was. Had I opened certain things earlier, you would have entered carrying unhealed urgency, and urgency can sabotage what favor opens. You would have called it answered prayer at first. Later, you would have realized you entered too early, partnered too quickly, exposed too much, trusted too fast, or built around excitement instead of discernment. So I let the door remain shut while I worked on your sense of timing. I was not teasing you, I was strengthening you. And here is the part the enemy hoped you would never understand. Some of the resistance was evidence that what is next is not minor. The pressure intensified because the enemy recognized movement before your emotions did. He could sense that what once delayed you no longer had the same grip. He could sense that your prayers were becoming less desperate and more aligned. He could sense that your tears were changing. Earlier, Your tears were mostly from pain. Lately, some of your tears have carried recognition. Something in you has known, even without language, that the season is shifting. You have felt it in prayer. You have felt it in your intolerance for old patterns. You have felt it in the way certain invitations no longer flatter you. You have felt it in the way your spirit has started choosing depth over speed. That is why I need to speak about silence. You have feared silence because you associated it with abandonment, with confusion, with being forgotten, with having no control over what happens next. But my silence is not always distance. Sometimes it is incubation, sometimes it is strategy, sometimes it is the moment when roots are deepening so thoroughly that if I explained everything too soon, your focus would rush upward, while I am still strengthening what must hold you underneath. Jesus was silent before accusation, not because truth had no defense, but because timing was governing his mouth. There is a kind of maturity I am building in you right now that does not need to answer every misunderstanding in real time. That maturity is part of the final step. So when I tell you not to react, I am not asking you to become voiceless. I am telling you there is a victory that forms when you stop spending sacred energy proving yourself to people who benefit from misunderstanding you. And something else activates in that restraint. Discernment sharpens. Motives become clearer. Hidden loyalties reveal themselves. Patterns that were once blurry become impossible to ignore. If you had reacted too quickly, you would have interrupted the exposing process already underway. Hold steady. More is being uncovered than you can see today. Like this video if you receive that as confirmation, because some of you needed permission to stop wasting strength on explanations that were never going to produce peace. There is one detail about this I have not touched yet, and it changes everything. The final step is not only about what I am bringing to you, it is also about what I am bringing out of you. I am drawing out a steadiness you did not know you had. I am drawing out a holy boldness that does not sound like noise. I am drawing out an ability to hear me beneath pressure. I am drawing out clean discernment from places that used to function by emotional impulse. I am drawing out the mature version of your yes. Earlier in your journey, your yes was sincere but fragile. It was real, but it was easily shaken by disappointment, delayed answers, or the disapproval of people close to you. Now, I am forming a yes that can survive when understanding arrives late. That deeper yes matters, because what comes next will require consistency, not just passion. Passion can start a thing. Consecration sustains it. Emotion can make you move fast. Wisdom will help you move clean. You have prayed, Lord, use me. You have prayed, Lord, send me. You have prayed, Lord, let what you placed in me finally break through. Beloved, part of my answer has been this season itself, because I do not only answer by opening outward opportunities, I also answer by forging inward capacity. If I trusted you with more before this stage, the pressure of it would have pulled on every unhealed place. Now, I am securing you from within. And let me name a hidden grief. Some of you are mourning years you believe you lost. You look back and think of all the time consumed by warfare, confusion, false starts, wrong connections, internal battles, recovery seasons, and hidden tears. You tell yourself that others are far ahead because your path was harder to read. But hear me, I redeem more than outcomes. I redeem sequence. I redeem time. I redeem the very places where you thought life was leaking away. I know how to make even what was meant to break you become material for wisdom, depth, compassion, authority, and unshakable discernment. Nothing surrendered to me stays wasted. This is where the word becomes very personal. You have been afraid that the next step will ask too much from you. You have felt the invitation of movement, and part of you has rejoiced, but another part has whispered, what if I cannot carry it? What if I fail in public? What if this new beginning exposes how fragile I still feel? What if I step forward and discover I am not as healed as I hoped? I do not mock those questions. I answer them. You will not carry what is next by pretending you are invincible. You will carry it by remaining close to me. The burden feels impossible when you imagine carrying tomorrow with today's strength. But I have never asked you to do that. I distribute grace in real time. So stop measuring the next season by the weakness you feel in this one. The weakness you feel now is not the final measure of the strength I will release then. Elijah felt the crash after victory. Hannah carried anguish before promise. Ruth walked through loss before alignment. Their stories were not proof of my absence. They were evidence that I work in ways that human timing rarely anticipates. What looks fragile in one chapter can become the exact place I pour supernatural steadiness into the next. I know how to strengthen what has been shaken. If you know this word found you on purpose, comment, "I say yes to God." Let that be simple, but let it be real. And if someone you love is walking through a hidden battle and needs confirmation, share this message with them so they do not keep reading their season through fear alone. Now hear another layer. The final step has begun, but not everybody around you will recognize it. Some will misread your quiet as weakness. Some will misread your boundaries as pride. Some will misread your restraint as passivity. Some will misread your withdrawal from noise as instability. Let them misread for a moment if they must. I am not building your next chapter on universal human understanding. I am building it on obedience. Noah looked strange before the rain. Nehemiah faced mockery while rebuilding. Esther carried the weight of timing before the king ever heard her voice. When heaven moves, it is not always legible to people who live only by surface impressions. This is why you must be careful, in the final step, not to seek validation from those who have no language for consecration. If you lean on them too heavily, their confusion will start sounding like wisdom to your tired emotions. Guard what I am doing, not with arrogance but with reverence. Do not throw emerging clarity into rooms committed to old versions of you. Do not over-explain what is still being formed. Do not invite every opinion into a place I have only entrusted to prayer. Because here is the hidden layer. Premature exposure can attract resistance from places that would have remained quiet if you had simply stayed covered. Learn the strength of sacred privacy. And sacred privacy is not isolation. It is not fear. It is not refusing community. It is the discipline of knowing that not every seed is meant for public handling. Even Jesus withdrew. Even Elijah heard me in a whisper, not in the spectacle. There are things I can build in you only when applause is absent and commentary is minimal. In that quiet place, motives purify. Dependency deepens. Identity roots itself in me instead of reaction. That is what some of your loneliness has really been about. It has not all been loss. Part of it has been invitation. What comes next in this word is one of the most important pieces. I am teaching you the difference between urgency and readiness. Urgency screams, "Move now or lose everything." Readiness says, "Move when I speak, and nothing meant for you will be lost." Urgency is often fear in religious clothing. Readiness is peace under authority. Urgency rushes intimacy. Readiness honors process. Urgency grabs at options. Readiness discerns assignments. Some of the hardest inner tension you have felt has come from these two voices colliding. Your flesh feared missing out. Your spirit knew forced movement would cost more than waiting. That collision created exhaustion. If this channel feels like a place prepared for souls in a season exactly like this, subscribe. Stay rooted here for the confirmations still ahead, because the next words you receive may be the ones that help you move with peace instead of panic. Now let me resolve another mystery from the beginning. You wondered why both grief and pull were present at the same time. Here is why. Because the final step requires mourning what cannot go, while also feeling the draw of what must come. Those two sensations often overlap. You are grieving an old season, old attachments, old expectations, old survival patterns, even old prayers that no longer fit who you are becoming. At the same time, you are being pulled toward deeper obedience, cleaner relationships, truer service, wiser timing, and a form of peace that does not depend on everyone staying. That overlap is disorienting if you do not recognize it. You thought something was wrong because you felt sad while also sensing movement. Nothing was wrong. You were standing in transition, and transition has a sound. It sounds like doors closing without your permission. It sounds like conversations growing shorter. It sounds like cravings changing. It sounds like your spirit resisting what your history once called normal. It sounds like a deeper weariness with pretending. It sounds like the holy discomfort of no longer being able to fit inside spaces that require you to edit your conviction. You were not losing yourself. You were outgrowing the costume. That is why some days felt raw. Costumes come off with friction. This is also why spiritual attack became more psychological in this season. The enemy did not need to destroy everything around you if he could make you distrust what was happening within you. If he could keep you second-guessing every discernment, every boundary, every grief signal, every holy no, then he could delay your stability without ever needing full access again. That is why I have been re-establishing you internally. I have been teaching you to notice when peace leaves. I have been teaching you not to call every emotional pull love. I have been teaching you to recognize the difference between burden and assignment, between empathy and entanglement, between mercy and self-betrayal. These are not small lessons. They are threshold lessons. Comment what you are trusting God for in this season, or the part of this word that confirmed you most. Let the comments become a place of witness and prayer, because many of you are carrying more than people around you realize. Stay with me, because the next layer is where it turns. The final step is not only separating you from what was wrong, it is also revealing what has been right, but hidden. Some connections are about to become clearer. Some assignments are about to come into focus. Some opportunities are about to appear with less confusion around them than before. Why? Because your discernment is cleaner now. Earlier, you might have received a true opening and then mixed it with old fear, people-pleasing, over-explaining, or the need for immediate certainty. Now, there is more room inside you for peace to lead. Do not mistake peace for passivity. Peace is not the absence of movement. It is the absence of inner warfare while moving. Some of you have known how to grind, strain, overwork, overthink, and push yourselves through closed spaces. But what is next will not be built by panic. There will still be work, still be obedience, still be courage, still be decisions that stretch you. But the internal engine will be different. Instead of desperation, there will be clarity. Instead of proving, there will be agreement. Instead of restless striving, there will be steadier steps. This is why I have been confronting your addiction to intensity. Not every strong feeling is holy direction. And before this word closes, one more thing must be exposed. Some of you have been waiting for a sign while ignoring the one already in front of you. Your old identity has been fighting to survive. That inner war you have felt is not because the new thing is unreal. It is because the old self knows its influence is weakening. The old self wants familiar coping, familiar approval, familiar drama, familiar excuses, familiar hiding. The new thing requires presence, honesty, accountability, courage, and deeper trust. So the old self has been loud. But loud does not mean lasting. A storm can be loud and still move on. When I say the final step has begun, I am also saying an old argument is ending. The argument that said you must remain who pain trained you to be. The argument that said you must keep apologizing for boundaries that preserve your calling. The argument that said if people pull away, you should shrink to keep them. The argument that said holiness is weakness, and discernment is overthinking. The argument that said, "You lost too much time to ever recover the ground." I am silencing those lies with truth and with movement. Some things are not broken off through information alone. They are broken off through obedient transition. If this word has become a mirror for your season, like this video as a sign of agreement, let your response be simple, but let it carry weight before God. Now let us go deeper into the practical instruction of the final step. First, stop announcing every seed before it takes root. There is wisdom in restraint. Not everything new needs immediate witnesses. Some of you have shared too early because you were reaching for reassurance. But reassurance from people can never replace certainty from me. And when you speak too soon, you often invite unnecessary interference, projections, questions, and opinions that cloud what was clear in prayer. Keep some things covered until fruit begins to speak for itself. I am not making you secretive. I am making you discerning. Second, do not romanticize what I removed. And this matters. Memory becomes dangerous when loneliness edits it. You will be tempted to remember old spaces more kindly than they truly were, simply because the unknown feels intimidating. But nostalgia is not always honesty. Some of what you miss is not what was present, but what you hoped could have become present. There is a difference. Do not go back in your emotions and recovenant with what I already disrupted, because there is something beneath that temptation. The enemy would love to keep you emotionally tied to a door I have already marked as finished. Release it fully, so your hands are free for what is next. Third, let your routines catch up with your calling. The final step is not only a dramatic spiritual event, it also has practical shape. Sleep matters, focus matters, stewardship matters, honesty matters. If I am expanding your assignment, then your life must become more congruent with the weight of it. You cannot keep feeding yourself chaos and then ask why clarity feels distant. You cannot keep borrowing peace from last-minute prayer while building days that train your mind for fragmentation. I am inviting you into wholeness, not just excitement. Wholeness can carry what adrenaline cannot. Fourth, watch what you repeat out loud. Words form atmosphere. I am not asking you to deny difficulty. I am asking you not to crown it. There is a difference between honest lament and rehearsed defeat. Some of you have unknowingly strengthened the very fog you were asking me to lift by continually speaking from the lowest moment of your last battle. Lift your language into alignment. Speak truth even when your emotions lag behind. Say what I have said, not only what fear has felt. Your mouth is not decoration in this season. It is part of how you walk forward. Comment, I receive this correction, if your spirit knows this is loving instruction and not condemnation. I am not pressing on you to shame you. I am pressing on you because the final step requires clean agreement. Here is another revelation. Part of what is coming next will feel quieter than you expected. You thought breakthrough would always arrive with thunder. Sometimes it arrives like settled conviction. Sometimes it looks like finally saying no without guilt. Sometimes it looks like peace returning to your body after months of tension. Sometimes it looks like the right person, the right opportunity, the right assignment, or the right confirmation entering your life without the old confusion around it. Do not miss it because it does not match your dramatic expectations. I move in fire, yes, but I also move in order. And order is a mercy to the chosen one who has lived under prolonged pressure. I am not only bringing you out of what hurt, I am teaching you how not to recreate it. That means the next chapter may include slower trust, deeper questions, cleaner boundaries, and a refusal to confuse urgency with intimacy. Honor that. Earlier versions of you may have called it guardedness, but if I am the one teaching it, it is wisdom. There is healing in not letting every hand touch what has only just closed from bleeding. One more piece must be said before I lead you toward prayer. Forgive yourself for how long it took to learn some of these lessons. Your regret has been too loud. Yes, there are things you would do differently now. Yes, there were moments you ignored what your spirit already knew. Yes, there were places where hunger made you vulnerable. But regret is a poor master. Let it become humility, not identity. Peter knew what it was to collapse under pressure and then be rebuilt by love. Failure did not get the last word over his calling, and regret will not get the last word over yours either. I am not finishing with you through accusation. I am finishing this stage through mercy and truth. If this message is strengthening you and helping you discern your season more clearly, share it with someone else who has been carrying hidden pressure. Sometimes one sent word becomes the confirmation that keeps another person from giving up too soon. And now hear the tenderness in my voice. You have carried more inwardly than many people know. You learned how to function while aching. You learned how to keep showing up while parts of your heart were still asking heaven for clarity. You learned how to smile while sorting through silent battles. And though that taught you endurance, it also made you lonely in places you struggled to explain. I know, I have known. I was there in the room after the conversation that unsettled you. I was there in the car after you held yourself together in public. I was there in the night when you asked me whether this hidden process would ever make sense. I was there when you almost gave up trying to be understood. I was there when you wondered whether anyone could feel the weight of what this season has been. You do not need to harden to survive what comes next. That is another lie I am breaking. You do not need to become cold to become discerning. You do not need to become detached to become obedient. You do not need to become unfeeling to become strong. I am not replacing your tenderness. I am sanctifying it. I am teaching your compassion to walk with wisdom. I am teaching your love to remain holy. I am teaching your sensitivity not to become a doorway for confusion. The final step is not the death of your softness. It is the death of your vulnerability to what misuses it. There is also restoration coming to your ability to recognize joy without suspicion. Pain taught you to brace yourself. Delay taught you to keep expectations low. Disappointment taught you to scan blessings for hidden exits, but I am healing that reflex. Not so you become naive, but so you can receive what is truly from me without constantly assuming loss is waiting behind it. Trust does not return all at once. It returns in layers, but it is returning. And that is part of what is coming next. Before I pray, let this settle in your spirit. The final step has begun, not because you are perfect, but because you are willing. Not because you have mastered every lesson, but because you have kept turning back toward me when lesser voices tried to define you. Not because the path has been easy, but because grace has sustained your yes through more than you think. Do not despise the way this season shaped you. The strength now forming in you is not loud, but it is real. The clarity now forming in you is not flashy, but it is clean. The authority now forming in you is not borrowed, but rooted. You are closer than your emotions have been able to measure. If this word truly helped you, and you know the Spirit has been using this channel to steady you in hidden seasons, subscribe and remain connected. There are more words ahead for souls carrying this kind of assignment, and you do not need to walk this part alone. Now I pray over you. Father, in the name of Jesus, I lift before you the one listening right now, the one whose heart has been stretched between grief and expectation, the one who has felt the pressure shift but has not fully known how to name it. I ask that your peace settle over them with unmistakable clarity. Let every counterfeit urgency lose its power. Let every false narrative that has tried to interpret this season through fear be broken. Let the noise that rose against their discernment begin to fall away. And even now, as I pray this, let one more thing be loosed over them, the courage to trust what you have been quietly showing them. Lord, where there has been confusion, bring holy order. Where there has been emotional entanglement, bring clean separation. Where there has been grief over what cannot continue, bring the comfort that comes from your nearness and your wisdom. Heal the places in them that still feel responsible for outcomes bars. You never assigned them to manage. Lift from their shoulders the weight of explaining themselves to every person who misunderstands them. Deliver them from the exhausting habit of chasing closure from closed hearts. Teach them the freedom of leaving unanswered things in your hands without surrendering their peace. I ask you to strengthen their inner life for what comes next, not just to open doors around them, but to establish them within. Build in them a steadiness that outlasts emotional weather. Build in them a discernment that does not become cynical. Build in them a boldness that does not require applause. Build in them a tenderness that remains pure without becoming unguarded. Build in them a maturity that knows when to speak and when holy silence is the greater testimony. Let timing govern their mouth. Let wisdom govern their choices. Let peace govern their steps. Father, I pray over every area where old identities have been resisting the transition, where shame has whispered, silence it with truth, where regret has replayed, interrupt it with mercy, where fear has said they are too late, answer it with your redemption. Where insecurity has tried to make them small, let your Spirit remind them who formed them, who called them, who preserved them through every hidden battle. And if there are any lingering ties to what you have already marked as finished, sever them by your kindness and your authority. Do not let nostalgia rebind what grace has already begun to release. For the one who has been afraid of the next assignment, I ask for fresh grace in real time. Let them not imagine tomorrow through the lens of today's fatigue. Meet them where they are. Strengthen them as they move, not only before they move. Let them discover that obedience carries provision. Let them discover that alignment carries peace. Let them discover that what looked intimidating from a distance becomes clearer when walked with you step by step. And if there are decisions ahead that require precision, illuminate them. If there are relationships that require discernment, expose what is hidden. If there are opportunities that are truly from you, let them come without the old fog that once surrounded similar choices. I pray protection over their mind. Guard them from spirals of second-guessing that make them suspicious of everything Holy Sirs you are doing within them. Guard them from the manipulation of voices that benefit from their confusion. Guard them from the temptation to over-explain sacred transitions to people who have not been invited into that ground. Teach them sacred privacy. Teach them clean boundaries. Teach them how to carry emerging clarity with reverence instead of anxiety. Let their life become increasingly congruent with the weight of the calling they carry. And Father, restore joy without fear. Restore hope without striving. Restore rest without guilt. Let their body relearn peace. Let their prayer life deepen beyond emergency. Let their routines begin to reflect the wholeness you are building. Let their mouth come into agreement with heaven. May they speak truth over themselves, over their home, over their next season, with growing conviction. May they no longer rehearse defeat as if it were destiny. May they speak as those being led, covered, corrected, and prepared. I also pray for holy confirmation to meet them in the days ahead. Give them unmistakable markers of your hand. Let Scripture come alive with timely precision. Let dreams, peace, wise counsel, and inward clarity align in ways that remove confusion, and where the enemy tried to cloud what you were making clean, reverse it. Where pressure tried to drive them into reaction, establish them in patience. Where loneliness tried to tell them they were abandoned, let your presence become more tangible than ever. Let them know, not as a slogan but as a living reality, that you have been with them in every hidden corridor of this process. Seal this word over them. Seal their heart against panic. Seal their mind against distortion. Seal their spirit against counterfeit voices. Seal their path from unnecessary entanglements. Seal their yes with deeper strength. And even as this prayer closes, let there be a fresh releasing in the unseen realm, right relationships finding their place, wrong attachments losing their grip, delayed clarity beginning to break open, and dormant courage rising again. Let the final step unfold under your lordship, not under fear. I bless their sleep. I bless their decisions. I bless their boundaries. I bless their healing. I bless their obedience. I bless the hidden work of restoration already underway. I bless the places where they are still tender, and I ask that your hand rest there gently but completely. May they walk forward without needing to perform certainty, because your presence will teach them as they go. May they carry this week differently. May they breathe differently. May they respond differently. May they trust differently. And may what comes next no longer be interpreted through the pain of what has been, but through the faithfulness of the God who has kept them until now. In Jesus' name, amen.